brands are saying, hey, we're spending money, we don't fully understand what's working, or we're just trying to get this thing started, but nothing is sticking. They're two very interesting problems, but
Okay.
it's been really fascinating to see both sides, and I definitely see the ambition. I actually get to sit really close to the brands and the internal teams that are trying to help them succeed. And so in any given week, I'm talking to a mix of enterprise brands who, again, already invested pretty heavily, all the way down to those smaller brands who are like just dipping the toe into the pond,
Yeah.
if you will. And so I get to see how all of those perspectives collide, which has been so interesting. And so a lot of the conversations are very much in real time, and they're very practical.
All right, let's start off
Do
with a big
it.
opening question.
Okay.
Is TikTok for everyone?
Oh, I love that question. Okay, I'll start with maybe a slightly spicy take.
Okay.
I don't think TikTok is for every brand.
Mm.
And I know that that might be kind of an unpopular opinion because the narrative is like, well, everyone should be on TikTok. And, maybe a year ago, I myself might have been guilty of saying that. But I think in reality, it's really not that simple. And a lot of brands are potentially learning that the hard way right now. Um, and so here's why. So TikTok rewards a very specific way of operating.
Mm.
It's fast, it's content heavy, it's very creator driven, and if you are not set up to do that, or maybe unwilling to do that, it's going to feel really hard, really fast.
Yeah.
And so it's not that TikTok can't work for a brand. It's that not every brand is ready to make it work yet. And so just to take it like one step further, there are absolutely categories that have a bit of a head start, right? Like beauty, personal care, wellness, fashion, of course. They tend to do so well. And I think the reasons are pretty obvious, right? They're very visual, they're easy to demonstrate. People looking for those types of products are already in that mindset of, I want to try new things. Um, but I try not to fall into the trap of there's good categories for TikTok and there's bad categories because
Yeah.
TikTok can actually be super unpredictable in that it can make even niche or, maybe weird categories kind of pop off when the
Mm.
content really lands with the right audiences. And so I personally think the better lens is, can this product translate into content that grabs attention quickly and makes somebody feel something like,
Mm.
oh, I need that, or that solves a problem, or, that's satisfying, whatever it is.
Yeah. I think that's a good frame of reference, especially, since we're talking maybe to some big brands that are considering getting on TikTok, considering
Yeah.
some of these things that they haven't really talked about before. I,
Yeah.
I said in the beginning that you're well positioned to have this conversation because you're interacting with brands like quite frequently, talking to them about TikTok. Tell me about what are a lot of these brands, what questions are they asking? Like what are the biggest conversations that you're having with some of these brands?
Yeah, I think honestly the biggest thing that I'm seeing right now is just a lot of confusion around where to focus. I think a lot of brands, they come onto TikTok and assume that it's going to behave maybe like a traditional ads channel. So
Hmm.
their first instinct is like, okay, well, how do we scale spend? How do I optimize, this campaign? But pretty quickly, I think they're realizing that that's not actually the core problem. The real challenge is content.
Yeah.
So, for example, how do we consistently produce content that feels native to the TikTok platform and actually is resonating with people in a way that's ultimately going to convert? And so, that conversation shifts pretty fast. It
Hmm.
it goes from how do we run ads to how do we build a system that can generate enough creative, um, test quickly enough, and actually learn what works so that we can repeat the process.
Hmm.
And I think that's where things really start to break down a bit, because most brands just aren't set up. I shouldn't say most, a lot of brands just aren't set up for that level of speed and volume.
Yeah. Do these brands that you're talking with already have content creation established to any degree, or is it TikTok specific, like vertical video, affiliate oriented, creator oriented content that's lacking?
I think it really depends. Some brands have really leaned in a big way, and they have, a vast network of affiliate creators that they're working with, and they've kind of got the machine humming. And then other brands who are, probably newer to the platform, maybe are just coming from an established channel like Amazon or Walmart, really haven't had to think about creative a whole lot. And so this is new, uncharted territory for them. And so, they're asking, what's the best way for us to scale? How do we tap into an affiliate network? Um, and to some degree, they need to be able or willing rather to relinquish control over how their brand is being spoken about. And I think
Yeah.
that's another hurdle for a lot of brands as well.
That's tough. And we talked about that in the TikTok Halo episode that Alistair and I did last week. That was another pretty big point of conversation was an aspect of TikTok being a nature of the platform being that people are just gonna, it's the freedom to create content
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
freedom to talk about whatever they want to talk about. There are positives to that and there are negatives to that as well. One of the
Yeah.
negatives that was pointed out were creators saying that this product was going out of stock and was like going away forever when it was not going away forever. That's a
Yep.
negative thing that can happen, but that's not, of course, every brand. The positive is that you can get some really good, genuine, organic reactions and content, and you can go viral. And I don't know if
Yep.
that's also, I'm curious if virality is a point of contention for some of these brands as well, or a focus, or not necessarily.
Yeah, I think, a lot of brands come in thinking, okay, we'll do a little bit of organic here, we'll do affiliate over here, paid over here, and they kind of treat them as different work streams, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think on TikTok, they're actually feeding each other constantly, right?
Mm.
All three of those assets. So organic is usually where you start to really learn what is resonating with a lot of your audience. It's obviously a huge win because it's low cost. You can test a lot of different hooks, formats, and messaging for virtually nothing.
Yeah.
And then affiliate really adds scale to that, right? It's, now you're bringing in creators who can produce really high value content at volume and
Mm.
often in a way that I think feels more native than what a brand could produce. And
Yeah.
then paid is really your amplifier, right?
Mm.
So it's how you take the things that are already working, already landing with those audiences and push them harder and faster. And so instead of thinking about it like three separate strategies, I think the brands that are doing this really well are thinking about it as a loop.
Mm.
So test organically, see what hits, let creators expand on that, and then use paid to scale your winners.
Mm.
And so when I see brands struggle, I think it's when they're skipping steps,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Like they'll
interesting.
go straight to paid
Mm.
without strong creative, or they're treating affiliate as this totally separate thing instead of integrating into it into their overall content strategy. And
Sure.
so the ones that figure it out are the ones that really build a system where those three pieces, if you will, are constantly informing each other.
Mm.
And once that loop is working, that's when you start to see really consistent performance.
I mean, it's definitely more involved than I thought. More, it takes more to succeed on TikTok than I thought originally. The more I learned about TikTok, the more I realized that. And
Yeah.
that probably wasn't the case a couple of years ago. It was probably a different ball game, but just because of how the nature of the development of TikTok, it's changed.
And
I
quickly.
want to zoom out a little bit. When I was talking to you before about this episode, you mentioned two kind of, as you're analyzing the brands you're talking to, you kind of put them into two camps.
Yeah.
I called, or the nature of that came in the perspective of like a big investment type of brand and a breakthrough brand. Tell me about both of those different types of people that are looking at TikTok right now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is something that I'm seeing really consistently now. So there's basically two completely different conversations happening, depending on where a brand is at in their TikTok journey. So on one side, like you said, you've got the more mature brands. They're already investing pretty heavily. Maybe they got onto the platform early, they saw that demand, they wanted to be a part of it. And so they've got ad spend flowing. They've probably seen some success, and now their questions are a lot more strategic.
Hmm.
So they're asking things like, is my TikTok investment incremental to my entire business? What's the halo impact, to use our favorite word? What's the halo impact across Amazon or DTC? How do I justify to my stakeholders that I need to continue investing in this channel and ultimately scale this internally? Then on the other side, completely different conversations, right? And I think you have brands that are still very much trying to break through.
Hmm.
And so their questions are way more foundational. So it's very much like, why isn't anything working? Or are we doing something wrong? When do we turn ads on again? Or,
Yeah.
do we actually need to work with affiliates and creators? So it's kind of funny because it's the same platform, but the
Hmm.
problems are vastly different
Yeah, that's interesting.
depending on where you are.
Which makes, again, that makes so much sense. And I see why brands I just want people to understand that there are brands on TikTok now that are investing big in the
For
platform.
sure. Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that's the norm. Like, again, you go back a couple years, there were brands that were investing, but not, my perspective is not at the level that these brands are now. Like big brands that are starting to bring in invest money to try and integrate the
Yes.
process. So let's
Yes.
say, okay, there's these two camps, and there are probably more camps, but there's for now we're identifying these two camps types of brands. The big investment brand, the Halo stage brand, let's say, and the breakthrough
Yeah.
brand.
Yeah.
For the Halo stage, the the brands that are investing a lot of money right now, where are those brands getting stuck? And
Mm.
what is the solution for those brands getting stuck right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for brands who are really focused on, or they're already investing, right? And
Mhm.
they're maybe focused on the halo effect, I think where they get stuck is almost always measurement and internal alignment.
Hmm.
So even when performance on TikTok is strong, it can be really hard to prove that in a way that feels concrete enough for leadership teams that are maybe used to more traditional attribution models. And so the data can feel a little messy. And, TikTok doesn't always fit really neatly into existing reporting frameworks.
Yeah.
And so I think what ends up happening is that you have teams who really feel like it's working and they believe in it. They're bought in at this stage. They're seeing those signals, but they can't always package that in a way that's a clean story
Hmm.
internally. And so I think that's usually where things start to slow down for them. And so it's not that the channel is not performing,
Right.
it's that it's harder to explain and defend that continued investment.
Yeah. And solution to that, it's probably difficult. It's probably a
Yeah.
difficult thing to solve for currently. But is there what your perspective on what best solution for this problem that these big investment brands are making?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, brands that actually break through and want to continue the success have to flip their mindset.
Hmm.
Stop trying to predict what's going to work. Start testing a lot more. Really continue to lean into creators. They're going to produce way more content than maybe what feels comfortable for the brand. And then let that performance really guide your investment decisions.
Yeah.
It's going to become less about having the perfect strategy up front and more about building a feedback loop that's, get the content out, see what resonates, double down on that, and just keep iterating. And I think once they hit that first signal, things can move really, really quickly from there.
Yeah. Especially adding to this as well, as we continue to understand the halo effect and the effect that TikTok has on Amazon sales,
Hmm.
then I'm sure that will help address this problem for big investment brands specifically when it comes to attribution.
Yeah.
As we help create a much more clear picture for the effect that TikTok has on other channels, like that, just over time is probably going to get better and better and better.
I
Um,
certainly think so. And it's a really interesting problem for us to try and solve, which is why I'm so excited to be working on this product. I think,
yeah.
TikTok doesn't necessarily behave in a clean last click way,
Hmm.
right? It's not like Amazon where you can clearly see or tie intent rather to your conversions.
Yeah.
It's much more about influencing demand earlier in the journey,
Hmm.
right? Which is very different than how a lot of channels behave. And so these brands start asking, like, okay, we're seeing this. We've got the impressions. Like, it looks like our content's doing well, but what else is this driving? Like, are we actually seeing lift on Amazon? Are we seeing our branded search increase? Are people maybe discovering us here on TikTok and then they're converting somewhere else, whether that's on Amazon or on our website or what have you? And so I think that's where the halo problem becomes really important, as you
Yeah.
and Alistair spoke about in the last podcast, because it really helps them, again, back to my earlier point, they can go and make the case internally that, look, this is not just a top of funnel experiment anymore, right? It's
Yeah.
actually driving meaningful business impact. And
Mm.
that's, what we want to help them be able to prove.
What about the breakthrough brands? So again, the brands that are just or want to try and break through.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not making as big investments monetarily as some of these other big investment brands, the Halo brands. Where do you see those brands, the ones that are trying to break through, where are they getting stuck? Where's the biggest roadblock for them?
I think the most common thing I hear is basically some version of, well, we've tried TikTok, but it just doesn't work for us. And then when you actually dig into it, Cam, it's almost never that the platform isn't working.
Yeah.
It's that the approach is not aligned with how TikTok actually works.
Hmm.
And so usually you can pinpoint it on a couple of things. Number one reason I see is you're not producing enough content, and or the content feels way too polished,
Hmm.
and very brand heavy, which is not why people are on TikTok. They're there to be delighted and entertained and stumble upon something that they didn't know that they needed or wanted, right?
Yeah.
And so, or some brands just try to get every single thing perfect before they test.
Yeah.
And I,
Yeah.
I just think that that's the wrong approach. TikTok also doesn't reward that.
Right.
And so what it does reward, and for those brands, I would say the mindset that you need to get into is volume, speed, and iteration.
Hmm.
And those are the brands that we are starting to see break through. They're flipping their mindset, they're doubling down on content, they're done trying to predict what's working. And just again, doubling down on a good content strategy that feels native to TikTok.
Sure. I would guess a big part of this is just being exposed to the platform, like being not
100%.
as a brand owner, not shopping on or going to shop on TikTok, or just looking at shop, but also just participating in the viewing experience of understanding
Yeah.
what content works. And I
Yeah.
think that's partly why tapping into affiliates is an effective strategy to some degree. Again, not the only way to succeed on TikTok, but
Yeah.
affiliates, content creators on TikTok, if they're popular by nature, they understand to a certain degree what some people on TikTok want to see and are good at creating content that reflects that. And not every affiliate or content creator is going to do well and be able to push a brand forward. But I think
Yeah.
that's why some brands tend to tap into affiliates and content creators on TikTok because these content creators already understand that aspect.
100%. And some brands really understand that and get it.
Yeah.
And other brands don't want to relinquish control about how their products and brand are being spoken about.
Mm.
And I think that scares them. They want to retain a lot of creative control over what's being said and be really involved in the process of writing scripts. And it's understandable, but I think that's also not going to work very well on TikTok.
Yeah.
Yes, it's important to find affiliates that resonate with your brand and are going to feel authentic to their audiences. But you got to let them do what they do best,
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
right? Yeah.
Last last takeaway. What do you want
Okay.
what do you want people to hear? What do you want people to remember about TikTok as it relates to this conversation?
I think a year ago, I mean, it's changed so much, right?
Mm.
I think a year ago, a lot of brands were still in this experimental phase with TikTok. Let's maybe test this and see what happens. I think now it feels a lot more serious,
Mm.
in a fun way.
Yeah.
Brands are allocating real budget. They're building teams around it. They're hiring, and now brands are expecting this to become a real growth channel for them. And so I think also, though, with that shift, expectations have gone up.
Mm.
And so now the questions are less about whether to invest. The answer is yes. And more about how to do it in a way that is scalable and measurable.
Mm. Nice.
The time is now, though. If you're early, like you're still on time, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, yeah.
if you're thinking about joining it now, you're not late to the party.
Sure.
All of that to say. But I'll leave you up with this as well. I think the biggest mistake that brands could make is thinking that TikTok is going to work like another channel. Do not try to apply the same playbook. Um, Maybe it's for Amazon or Meta.
Yeah,
Very structured, very controlled. It is not going to translate one to one.
yeah.
And so TikTok again is much more about speed, volume, creative iteration. I'm sure you're sensing a theme here. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it really is a very different muscle to flex. And so the brands that win are the ones that are willing to adapt to that instead of forcing their existing strategy onto the platform.
Yeah. And maybe there are some people like that's such a good key takeaway. And maybe there are some people listening to this that are like, well, of course. But Allie, you're actually having conversations with these big brands
Yeah,
and you are aggregating all those conversations, all that information into this conversation. These are the things big brands are running into. And smaller
100%.
brands too. Brands all across the board.
It's
So,
it's been yeah, I mean it's been great. I think I'm not just looking at it, I'm a product person, but
yeah.
I'm not just looking at TikTok from a product perspective, right? I actually get to sit really close to the brands and the internal teams that are trying to help them succeed. And so in any given week, I'm talking to a mix of enterprise brands who again already invested pretty heavily, all the way down to those smaller brands who are like just dipping the toe into the pond,
Yeah.
if you will. And so I get to see how all of those perspectives collide, which has been so interesting. And so a lot of
Wow.
the conversations are very much in real time, and they're very practical. And so, brands are saying, hey, we're spending money. We don't fully understand what's working, or we're just trying to get this thing started, but nothing is sticking. They're two very interesting problems, but
Yeah. That's good.
it's been really fascinating to see both sides, and I definitely see the ambition. Brands really want to make this work. They see the demand. I don't know if you saw the news, but just a couple months ago, I think in March, you have Ulta and Sally Beauty
Yeah.
joining TikTok Shop as two, massive retailers, and I think that is a really, really strong signal,
It's huge.
that again, like the time is now. Don't
Yeah.
wait.
Much more to come, especially as it relates to TikTok, our development of TikTok Halo, a solution for TikTok Halo.
Yeah,
There's a lot more. But Allie, thank you so much for helping us paint a more clear picture of what it takes of the current state of TikTok and what it takes to succeed. Looking
my
forward to more
pleasure.
conversations in the future.
Thanks for having me.